Well, last night we had a wonderful and moving performance in the sanctuary of Prisoner of Tehran, presented by Motus O Dance Theatre. And so it is my great honor this morning to be able to have Jack Langenhausen and Cynthia Croker from Motus O to be here and to be able to answer a few more questions. We did have some questions and answers last night, but I want to go a little bit more in depth. So I would invite Jack and Cynthia forward now to join me here. Good morning. Sheryl. So not everyone here was at the performance last night and saw it. So I'm just wondering if one of you could give kind of a brief synopsis of the story and the production.
Go for it. You want to do it?
You do it. I have this.
All right. Before I do that, I want to thank Neil for changing this, and that's a lot of work, Neil. And yeah, thanks for the transformation. That's just, we really appreciate it. We couldn't have done it here without you making this happen, so thank you. So Prisoner of Tehran is a story of Marina Nemat. It's her memoirs. She was born in Iran, Tehran. And when she was 16, she was part of the whole switch over when the Ayatollah Khomeini took over, and they went from a democracy to a dictatorship. And so she was 16 when that happened. So she was one of the young people protesting at the times, and she was imprisoned for her involvement. And she spent 2.5 years in Evin prison, where she was tortured and made to be a prison bride, and basically gave up her religion and everything in order to stay alive. She had a death sentence, which became a life sentence when one of the guards married her and got that changed. And 2.5 years later, she was let go and fast-tracked to today. She does live in Canada, in Aurora is her home base. And so she wrote this book of what occurred in prison and in their culture at that time. And I think that's good. Yeah, that sums it up.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
And so I know that, originally Marina performed with you as herself, and then Cynthia, you took on the role of Marina, which was, after a while I forgot that you weren't Marina. And I'm just wondering, was that difficult to take on that role when your experiences, have been quite different?
It's interesting that everyone asks me that. And I guess, yes, people say, how can I do that? Because what Marina experienced, her feet were lashed with a length of cable to the point where her feet were the size of party balloons. And when I first met her, I kept staring at her feet. I couldn't stop looking at her feet. And so I think now it's not really something difficult for me. It is just an incredible honor. And I think that happened because we worked with her for about 4 years to put this show to, it didn't take us 4 years to put the show on, but working with her and then touring with her and watching her say the story and becoming her friend. And so when the transition happened, I think that's one of the reasons she said yes. I always encouraged her that if if it becomes too much, don't worry, I can always take over your part. And I think that's one of the reasons maybe why she said yes, because she wasn't sure if she wanted to take it on in that way. So I just sort of felt like I saw how passionate she was. I think the key for me was I saw how passionate she was to bear witness, as she said, because it took her years, like maybe over 20 years, to finally talk about it. And when she talked about it, she realized that was kind of what she was supposed to do on this planet at this point. And so when it became too difficult for her because of her post-traumatic stress syndrome and just different things, and the show became very popular, it was kind of too much of a burden for her to carry. So I was at that point, more than willing to carry that with her. And so I think what happened in that time of getting to know her, honor surpassed the fear, or honor surpassed, I'm very emotional because that's what happened. And so people say, isn't that difficult to do? I just feel honored. And it's a privilege. And that is an incredible gift. So I'm in contact with her, and she's just so thrilled. She actually prayed that she would have a clone one day. And I think that's kind of what happened. So I feel energized. I know that might sound strange, but I feel energized and empowered to do this show. And it's yes, I get tired and I have to take a nap, but I don't know. It's probably the most, for me personally, to see God in her story, and to see, when I was growing up, one of my biggest heroes was Corrie ten Boom. I don't know if you know who she is, but I read the book, The Hiding Place. I was 17 and I just consumed that book. And I just thought, what a woman of God. And yet in the movie, like, she was so distraught that God would take her entire family, her sister, all those things. And she said, it's too much for me, God. And yet she found comfort in that God was bigger than all of that. And that's always my thing too. God's bigger than whatever we come across. And that's how Marina lives too. She had horrible things happen to her. But like she told me, somehow when you're at the end of your rope, some door opens. And so that's the beautiful thing. Finding those doors in the midst of intense pain or intense whatever happens to us. Seeing that door of grace that God opens. So.
Just an observation, when Cynthia took the role over, Marina played it quite differently. When Marina was doing the role, she was quite matter-of-fact. And when Cynthia was directing it one day, she asked Marina, she said, well, can you put a little more emotion into this part here? And she stopped and she very frankly said, I can, but I may not come back again. So that was like, oh, so it was an awareness that Marina, was able to separate the memoir speak from her emotional being, and she needed to do that in order to be safe. Some days were good, some weren't. So, but then when Cynthia took it over, she was able to obviously add that emotional depth that Marina, didn't. But what that provided for us as dancers was the opportunity, we became the emotion for her. So she would speak much more matter-of-factly, and we created the landscape of emotions through the music and the lighting and the movement. So it was an interesting transition that we had to do, but it also opened a door for us of what was our part, as opposed to, as dancers, you want to be, hey, look at me. And then this show was like, hey, don't look at me. Feel me, in the background, which was very opposite to as a performer. Anyone who performs, you have to step back and go, no, we don't want to be noticed, yet we want to be a part of it and simulate it. We don't want them to lose her words. So it was a very odd process choreographically to pull us back. When do we pause? When do we engage? So it was, it provided us a new opportunity because of Marina's condition. So, anyways.
So we heard the story of Moses. He's minding the sheep. He encounters this burning bush that is not being consumed. He hears the voice of God. and then God gives him a job to do, which he's quite surprised about. I'm just wondering if anything in that text resonates with Marina's story.
Well, when you sent me the email, I just kind of stared at it. And really, the only thing I could come up with, it talks about verse 7, where God sees our suffering. And then that brings another question where people go, well, if he sees it, well, then why did it happen in the first place? That's another whole debate. But that's all I could come up with, and I know Marina knows that God saw her plight, and yet she was beaten to a pulp, right? So a lot of people get stuck there. Well, where was God there? Where was God when my feet are getting beaten to a pulp? And right next to her, right? And she, so I decided, well, why don't I ask Marina what she sees in that scripture? So I'll read you what she said, because I thought Friday night I couldn't really come up with anything other than that, other than God sees, the plight that we all are in, or in case she was in. So she said, "Dear Cynthia, yes, you are right. The one theme that is seen is God sees all of our suffering. And many times a door opens when we are at the end of our rope." She goes, "But after some thought, I saw something else, which is maybe because it is something that's always on my mind. And that something is bearing witness. I think Moses decided to check out that bush instead of running away. I'm sure he was scared to approach the burning bush, but he did it. And what ensued was that he ended up becoming a full-time witness, and that became his identity. Everything he did from that point on had to do with bearing witness, and he had to stand up to the earthly authorities, to the Pharaoh, and continue this work, which demanded a lot of him. Of course, my case is much, much more subtle, way more, but it also has to do with bearing witness. And while in prison, I had to bear witness to love and refuse to do evil. And afterwards, when I was released, it took me such a long time to gather the courage to actually stand and speak out and to actively bear witness. I hope this helps. And if I think of anything else, I'll let you know. Big hugs, Marina.
That was so kind of her.
Yeah. And that was the whole thing that in the video she pointed out. It was an encouraging time, because originally she wrote the book for her own mental health. She had no intention of publishing her story, ever. She was a waitress at Swiss Chalet and heard about this memoir writing course at U of T. And she just sort of thought, if I could get it out of me onto a piece of paper, maybe that would help. And so that was her goal. And it was in that process of writing that, of course, in a writing course, everyone reads to each other, and the teacher heard her story, and he just pulled her aside and said, "I'd really like to help you get this published." And she said, "Absolutely not." Her husband hadn't even known what happened to her, like nobody knew. And so, but bit by bit, that kept coming out, kind of like the burning bush. That's really to bear witness to. There comes a point when that will also help her, but also help the future generations and help people. There was a woman here last night who was also protesting in Iran. She's 3 years younger than Marina, she wasn't arrested. But she was bawling in my arms last night, she said, because friends of hers would just disappear. And so that was like a floodgate of healing for her, just to walk it through to there's things in our lives that we have to face head on, it seems. And so Marina decided she will do that, and that's what she's continuing to do for the rest of her life.
Well, last night when I came out to introduce the evening, you know, it was a very different place. The sanctuary was dark, and there was just the white stage with a few pomegranates on it and one light. And, you know, we've been talking about the idea of holy ground, and I'm wondering, is a stage holy ground?
I think it is. It's where we provide transformation of some sort, and whether it's through laughter or through tears or through reflection, I think the stage provides an opportunity to mirror back life, and that's, to me, that is holy ground, because it's a place to be cherished and respected, and
And, you know, also in our text, you know, God gives Moses a job, and Moses he's not too thrilled about it in the beginning, but he eventually takes it on. Do you feel like with your work with Motus O, is that a vocation for you? Is that a calling?
I would say unequivocally yes for me, but I too, like Moses, was pretty angry at times. I also looked at the text, you know, they believe, right, Moses was raised in the house of Pharaoh. So the Pharaoh at the time was probably kind of his stepbrother. So it gets really complicated, which I think puts another whole thing on that. We don't really know, like they think it's King Ramses II was the Pharaoh that Moses, you know, came to see. But on the other hand, maybe that's why Pharaoh said, okay, I'll listen to you because, you know, we hung out together growing up. I don't know. Like, only God knows those things, and, you know, scholars are trying to figure it out.
we'll Google it.
Well, yeah. But definitely he was raised by, he was raised in Pharaoh's house. So, and, you know, I think as well the stage for me has become where, just like what I told you about the story with Marina, I was, in a sense, I think, chosen to be her clone. Like, it was so random how we met her, and I don't know, you know, like, it just kind of one step led to another. And that's how life is. Like, I took one step to say, yeah, I feel we're supposed to start a dance company, but it was so rough going for the first decade. I thought, and I got really angry at God. I said, well, cut us some slack here. It's like, we had to like hog tie people to come out to see a show. Like, literally, okay, the only way you could get them there is if you tied them up and dragged them into the theater. That's what it seemed like, right? So I was like, you know, I'm just done with it. I said to God one day, why do you care so much about this? Nobody cares about dance. Nobody cares about this. Nobody cares. Why do you care? I don't care. I'm sick of caring about this. That was my honest conversation. So I know for myself, that was a big deal, because God spoke to me like pretty loudly. I said, why do you care about this? And this was after 7 years of asking. God said to me 3 words. Dance is me. So I went, oh, okay. So for me, that kind of changed things. So then I'm like, okay, maybe the world will never care about it, but you care about it, so make me care about it the way you care about it.
There you go.
Here you are.
And here we are.
Here we are.
And for me, it wasn't a vocation call. I'm just a sucker for punishment. Let's start a not-for-profit charity dance company when the recession hits in 1990. I think we got something going here.
Well, thank you both so much. Any final thoughts?
No, well, for me, I just want to thank the church for giving us the opportunity to perform here. I mean, it was a lot of work, it was a lot of rescheduling over 4 years, or the fourth time, over the last 2 years to make it actually happen. Rhoda said, maybe it's not meant to be. And I said, I've lived a life of perseverance in the arts, and there's no such thing as not meant to be in our world. It will happen. But it was just you guys opening your doors here provided us the opportunity to present this. So thank all of you for providing a facility and for facilitating the opportunity. So yes, we can't share it without people like you providing space for us to share it. So thank you.
It was our honor and privilege, and hopefully the first of many collaborations.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.